Well, our reporters are all over the story. Dasen Thathiah is one of those reporters. He's live in Amanzimtoti. Dasen, you've been monitoring the situation there for the better part of the afternoon. What's the latest?
Well, Shahan, let me start here. We all know about this massive collapse in Amanzimtoti, and right now it seems like it's become a little bit of a tourist attraction. You'll just see here behind this cordon tape, many of the passers-by are stopping to take photos. Others are still in complete disbelief about what's taken place here. And just to remind you of that, I'll take you a little bit closer, as far as I can get really, because we've been told that there is still a further risk of some of this land collapsing in the aftermath of the storm. So I think it would be best if we just stay here. But one of the other things that's happening today, Shahan, is that there's work that's being done to clean up this area. Off to my right is the eThekwini municipality that is working. They've cordoned off that section of the road as well, trying to clear out some of the rubble. You'll also recall that President Cyril Ramaphosa had come here with that government delegation a few days ago, and when he was here, one of the things that he did tell this community is that he would certainly offer them assistance and make sure that everything that needs to be done here to get life back to normal would actually be done. So behind me you're seeing now a crane, and that crane will be used to pull out some of the vehicles that are buried in this rubble. One of the reasons is that you'll remember the story of Johan Fourie. He was the man who barely escaped with his life when part of his home collapsed here after the storm. He now says that he's lost almost everything. He's trying to salvage what he can. So this crane will then pull out those vehicles that he's lost, and that should help him try to claim back some money from the insurance. For now, as I understand it, he is being put up at a shelter. I did run into him earlier, but unfortunately he's now left.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see all of those visuals. Dasen Thathiah monitoring the situation in Amanzimtoti. Of course, our coverage on the storm and the floods in KwaZulu-Natal will continue later on in Newsnight. But why am I here? I'm here at the Durban beachfront in Blue Lagoon because of the pollution we've witnessed after these floods. Plastic we saw mostly, as well as polystyrene, washing up at the beachfront. Let's give you a quick picture of what exactly is happening. You'll see the water very brown because that's water coming through the rivers from across the province. And then just behind me, you might not be able to see it right now, lots of plastic bottles and polystyrene. In fact, the Durban harbour earlier was covered with them, and volunteers and workers, of course, going to try and clear things up. This is why the conversation moves on to this. We're going to speak to Niven Reddy, who's from Groundwork. He's been monitoring the situation in this province, in South Africa in general, in particular when it comes to plastic. Niven, thank you for holding the umbrella because it started raining as we actually went to air. So tell us about what this means, the fact that we've seen all these plastic bottles, polystyrene wash up into the ocean. What does that say about how we are recycling and waste management?
Well, Shahan, I think part of the problem is that we always consider this to be the onus of recycling these products to be on the consumer themselves. So too often we think that we are being guilt-tripped into having to recycle these products. But the reality is that these products are being designed, not meant to be recycled. So we need to change our mindset as well, that plastic in particular is a waste management issue. Plastic is not a waste management issue. It is the corporations that are designing a product that is not meant to be managed. Polystyrene, for example, we can say recycle, but it has no market for being recycled. So all it has to do is end up in the environment. That's all it can be done with it.
So what do we do in the meantime? Because these companies are not going to stop producing polystyrene or plastic anytime soon. What do we do to ensure that the next time we have flooding in this province or any other part of the country, that we don't see it end up here?
Sure. I mean, we definitely need to act responsibly with the way we handle our waste. But again, we just need to understand that we can try and recycle as much as possible. We can recycle everything in our house. We can separate our waste with wet waste and dry waste and recycle the dry waste. But in reality, it's that only 9% of all the plastic that has ever been produced has been recycled. So while we can recycle this, we need to understand that recycling is not enough, because every day that we recycle, the same amount of plastic is being produced. And it is just building up and building up. And the only way to break free from this plastic crisis is to stop producing so much of plastic.
What's the consequences of this plastic washing up ashore?
Well, some of the plastics here, like especially the bottles and the styrofoam and stuff like that, when they are exposed to water, they can break up into microplastics. And often they will end up in the tissues of fish. And we know that there are a lot of, I think there's like 12,000 subsistence fishermen along the coast of Durban that will consume as their livelihoods. So that's a serious problem as well.
Yeah.
That we are ingesting plastic, which is toxic to our health.
Now, as an environmentalist, as an organization groundwork, what's government's role in trying to encourage people, also when it comes to the management of waste in the country?
Sure. So the way we see waste and plastic as well is that we need to move towards a zero waste system. We need to move towards a system where there's no waste created, where there's all the waste that is created and generated will be diverted from landfill. So all of the wet waste in households will move towards biodigestion and composting, and all the dry waste will move towards recycling. But the only way this will work is if corporations play their part too and only create materials that are meant to be recycled. And that starts with government implementing separation at source policies in which people like you and me can do this in our houses. Yeah. It has to be implemented. It cannot just have a policy for the sake of having a policy. It has to be strongly enforced.
All right, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. That was Niven Reddy from Groundwork. You can leave with the umbrella now. Thanks so much, Niven. I guess I'm standing in the rain, and it's fitting going into this next segment because Candice Mkhekni is, of course, monitoring the situation in Mozambique. That's where Cyclone Kenneth is expected to make landfall in the next hour or two. Candice, what can you tell us?
Hi, good evening. Well, Shahan, the landfall has actually already started, and it's quite a process. Landfall is defined when the eye of the storm starts to enter the coastline, and of course, with the size of that eye, it's a period of time, so it's not an exact minute. But we start to see those winds dropping off at 4 o'clock this afternoon. We saw a southeasterly wind in Pemba of around 45 kilometers per hour. And believe it or not, those are the winds dropping down, of course, from incredibly strong winds from early on in the day. Here's a max sky of ours, which shows the condition through to Thursday night. Lots of rain and thunderstorm activity, and you might even have seen those clouds spinning in a clockwise direction. Here's our satellite image, which, of course, shows that tropical cyclone making landfall this afternoon. There's the eye. It's along the coastline, and, of course, with those lighter winds in the vicinity of Pemba, it's very likely that the cyclone is starting to move in further inland. But of course, early on in the day, we saw a pressure of 940 hectopascals, a maximum wind speed of 203 kilometers per hour, and that is equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane with gusts of up to 260 kilometers per hour. It moved a little bit faster than what we anticipated, so of course that landfall came a few hours earlier than what many of those models were showing. But of course, as soon as it hits land, it loses the energy from the warm waters of the ocean and starts to weaken ever so slightly. We're expecting strong to gale force winds further inland as we head into Friday. And then, of course, the main thing with this particular tropical cyclone is the huge amounts of rainfall that we're expecting. The shades of yellow here represent between 100 and 200 millimeters of rainfall, and then the shade of red between 200 and 300 millimeters of rain, and then all the way up to 700 millimeters of rainfall in the shade of pink. And of course, that is over a 48-hour period. So lots of rainfall expected. Thankfully, not in the same region that tropical cyclone Idai wreaked havoc just a few weeks prior. But of course, still bringing in lots of rainfall and of course, strong winds with it. And of course, we'll be tracking that over the next couple of days. Back to you.
All right, so thanks so much for that, Candice Mkhekni. Appreciate it. Now, of course, our reporter Dasen Thathiah, who's covering the floods in Durban, will be going to Mozambique tomorrow, so he'll bring us coverage of Cyclone Kenneth about tomorrow afternoon or so. That's where we'll leave our floods coverage in KwaZulu-Natal. We'll have more news with Faith Mangope after this. Faith?